This episode is in partnership with Authority Magazine. Authority Magazine, a Medium publication, is devoted to sharing in-depth and interesting interviews featuring people who are authorities in business, pop culture, wellness, social impact, and tech.
Today's guest on Believe in People is an author, an advocate, and a mother.
Except, as she'll soon tell us, she's often considered an unfit parent, which just happens to be the title of her book.
Jessica Slice may appear disabled to many, but she is anything but. Jessica, welcome to Believe in People.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's such a pleasure for you to be here with us today. The first question I want to ask you is, what made you decide to write Unfit Parent? And was there like a particular moment when you knew this story had to be told?
You know, I was in grad school and my advisor suggested that I try doing some writing, non-academic writing. She said that she thought my academic writing was strong and that she thought that maybe it didn't need to stick to only studies and research. And I'm pretty impressionable, I guess. I was in my late 30s. And so one summer, I decided to take a break from a research project we were doing and to write. And then around that time, I went to a motherhood event. It was this podcast recording all about being a parent. And I looked around at the event and I was the only person visibly disabled and everyone was telling these stories and nothing felt true for me. But instead of thinking, oh, I wish this event included more stories, I thought, well, I must not be a real mom. It felt like that I was the flawed part of that equation. And so I wrote a piece about feeling like an imposter, feeling like as a disabled person, I wasn't a real parent. And I didn't know any better, so I sent it to two places, the Washington Post and the New York Times. No one told me that that's not where you start. And
Good for you.
Yeah, and the Washington Post bought it. They published it. And you know, not every essay that gets published gets a lot of attention, but this one did. I got hundreds of emails from other disabled parents saying, oh my gosh, I feel so seen. Thank you for talking about this. I felt like my experience is invisible. And I started to look into it. And there are, 6 to 10 million disabled parents in the US alone. Like there's this huge population of us, and we're almost totally absent from media portrayal or social media or books or movies, just like you don't really see parents in wheelchairs or disabled at all. And so I wrote another piece and another, and then actually a publisher reached out to me and asked if I would want to write a book. And I, at that point, had a literary agent. And I did. I wanted to write about this thing, which is the biggest part of my own life, at this point, like my disability and my parenting are what take up the majority of my mental energy and my physical energy. And so I feel really lucky to be able to write about it.
If we were to go back in history a little bit here, you were not always disabled. And I found it interesting in the book where I read you were actually out on a long hike in Greece in the summer heat and you became dehydrated and then you fell ill as a result of that. I'm just doing a real sort of thumbnail tale of what your story is. But as a result of of falling ill after the heat, you assumed you were going to get better, and you didn't. And then you found something else about yourself, that you did have something, and it took you 4 years to basically come to the conclusion that you were disabled.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it took 2 years to get a diagnosis with the first illness, dysautonomia. And it wasn't until I had a diagnosis that I really even believed I was sick. I woke up every day thinking, I'll be fine today. I'll be fine. Even though the shift in my health had been so dramatic. The day before the hike, I went on a 7-mile run. And the day after the hike, I couldn't even walk down a hallway to a bathroom. But without an answer, I thought, well, that must be a fluke. And I thought that for nearly 2 years. And then a year after that, I was diagnosed with a genetic disorder, which meant that my neurological condition was, very unlikely to ever improve. And then it was from there that I started to shift in my identity, like you said, from sick to disabled. And that really took a lot of time. That I think I started to identify as disabled when I was 35, and I took that hike at 28. So it took 6 or 7 years
Hmm.
to really think that the word disability applied to me.
Hmm.
And so, and then Jessica, where did you gather your resources and community to help support you in that journey? Because that must have just been just a roller coaster.
You know, the illness part at the beginning, I relied on the friends I had had for a long time, and my family and my little sister, both of them. I was living, I went through the end of a long-term relationship. I went through, a bunch of losses. I wasn't able to work anymore. My financial position changed dramatically. And I had good friends, but I felt really alone in my physical experience. My younger sister ended up becoming sick with the same thing, and we share the same diagnosis. And so I had her, but I still had this feeling of like everyone else lives one way and we have to live a different way. And then it was again in graduate school, I did an independent study project and I called it Grief and Disability, which is like pretty transparent that I was wrestling with some stuff. And my reading list for that just included this like litany of disabled thinkers and authors and advocates. And I was reading that and I thought, oh, I'm disabled. I'm part of this community of people. Like, it's not like I fell away from the ideal way of being and now I'm in a deficient body. It's like now I'm in a body that is part of this culture. And
Oh, that's
as I
true.
was as I was reading, I was like, oh, I really like this culture. These people are innovative and interesting and creative and kind, and they're creating a new way of being in the world. And there's hope here and there's a path forward for everyone. And so I felt now like instead of deficient, I felt lucky to be in this new community.
So let's go fast forward because your book is about parenting, and first of all, it has to be well. It's not such a difficult decision for someone to make if they want to be a parent. They want to be a
Hmm.
parent. They have a
Hmm.
kid, but that isn't the case when it comes to someone who is quote unquote disabled. Not only
Hmm.
isn't it the case within themselves. Can I do this? Am I able to do this? It sounds to me from reading your book that the outside pressures as well play a very large role, as in, you can't be a parent. You shouldn't be a parent.
Right.
And we may take your child away from you if you become a parent.
Right. Yeah. The levels of this are pretty profound. There's one, disabled people have limited access to gynecological care and to sexual education. Also, limited access to reproductive care if they need to terminate a pregnancy. Not all Planned Parenthoods are accessible for people with physical disabilities.
This
And
is in the
then
United States.
in the United States, yeah. And then IVF clinics often are unwilling to treat physically disabled people or intellectually disabled people. And then in the US, at least, there's in 33 states, it's legal to forcibly sterilize a disabled people, like person against their will. And then once you have a kid, most parents who lose custody of their children are disabled. There's a far higher rate of child removal among disabled people than non-disabled people. So the outside hurdles that a person must overcome in order to be a parent are significant, and those are all completely separate from the actual hurdles of a body and mind, which again do require adjustment and adaptations, but this is all applied hurdles, not inherent in one's body or mind.
Wow. And Jessica, what is your family life like now? How many children do you have?
I have two kids, 8-year-old and a 1-year-old, and I'm married to David. And yeah, we had our first child was adopted through the foster system when she was we met her when she was a newborn, adopted her when she was 1.5. And our second baby we had via surrogacy. Someone we love very much was a surrogate for us, and he was born in early 2024.
Wow.
Mhm. Are you lying down right now?
I am reclined. I have my feet elevated. I would say I'm at like 60 degrees.
Mhm. Well,
Yeah,
again,
that's
I mean, there's so much that we could talk about today, but
There is.
part of your deal is
mhm.
that you do have to lie down for a lot
Yeah.
of the time,
Yeah.
which means that changing diapers, all these kinds of things,
hmm
require it all requires like a whole new level of ingenuity.
hmm hmm
But 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 you figure it out, do you not?
You, you do. I mean, every parent figures it out. I do. So in within reach of my bed, so I spend almost all my time on an adjustable bed. It's like a you know, kind of like a king-sized hospital bed. Like the foot raises up and the head raises up. A lot of people have these. And then I also have a power wheelchair that I can use, but our current home is not accessible. And so the wheelchair can't go in most places of the home, which is why I need to be in the bed. And then within reach of the bed, I have a bunch of kids' toys. I have their food. I have diapers, wipes. I'm just looking around. I'm equipped to take care of the kids without having to do things that my body can't do. I think I've just expanded like what do you think is appropriate or okay to do in bed? And there's no reason why I can't feed a child from bed or change a diaper here. You know, I have hand sanitizer and wipes to clean my hands. I keep trash bags nearby.
Mhm.
I think it's I think when people think about disabled parenting, they think there's this way of parenting and then they imagine doing that, but without vision or without being able to stand or without being able to do all these things. And it seems impossible. But disabled parents invent new things from the ground up. It's not like we're altering or shifting the non-disabled way of doing things. You know, I
Yes.
watched my friend Jessie Owen today posted on TikTok a video. She's quadriplegic and she posted a video of by herself getting her two almost 3-year-old twins up and out the door and into the car, and it showed the way they all work together, and it's just beautiful. It's like every step is creative and connected, and I mean also exhausting like it is for every parent. But she wasn't doing it like a non quadriplegic person. She was doing it like herself. She had invented her way of doing
Yeah.
it.
And kids are pretty adaptable. I mean, wouldn't they sort of,
Yeah.
do you find that they work with you? I mean, do they have that cognitive, I mean, would they just sort of, I guess, through maybe reflex? Do you think that that's just what they do?
Yeah. I mean, my 8-year-old is a very attentive, well, she has big body movements. I mean, she's a high energy person, but she's very attentive. She has a very, very kind heart. And um, this may be my disability or may just be that I'm picky, but I really don't like the overhead lights in our house. They make my head hurt. And when she sees me coming, she turns off the overhead lights and turns on the lamp. And it's not because I've ever come in the room like with my voice booming, like who turned on these lights. It's just she's a kind child. Or if she feels like a room is warm and I may be getting too hot, she'll turn on a fan. And I don't know, people say like, well, isn't that not letting a kid be a kid or shouldn't a kid not have to take care of their parents? But she's also still very much a kid. I mean, she's like an agent of pure chaos also. And I think teaching her to be a child who also thinks about another person's experience in the world is only helping her. I want her to think about other people and how other people feel. And it's made her a very attentive big sister. She's very good at thinking about what her baby brother needs or considering his hunger, considering where he could get hurt. You know, I think it makes her a more well-rounded person
Well,
to have a disabled mom.
like what's the difference? So your kid turns the light on or out. What's the difference between coming home, taking your shoes off, or making your
Yeah.
bed? Or isn't that not just one of those things? The only thing about it is it's just a little bit different than what the norm is.
Right.
And, here's a phrase from your book: I don't have to be ashamed. And again, that's sort of a societal thing. Like, I mean, this is kind of Pollyannish, but when I had my
Mm,
broken leg and I was in a wheelchair,
mm,
I very quickly realized that people were looking over me and around me and through me,
yeah.
basically because I didn't exist. Now,
Mm,
that's just me with a broken leg, and I apologize because I'm speaking to you, and
mm,
your situation is a lot different. Now, I'd like you to talk. After having said that, I want you to talk to me about this whole idea of ableism, and you're supposed to like
mm.
overcome this kind of stuff. And again, these things are all societal. I'm kind of hung up on that today. Um,
Mhm.
that's another that's a hurdle, is it not?
Right. I mean, there's two ways that ableism plays out, and then they intersect. One is that there's this like very real practical ableism that people don't think it's important necessarily that I'm able to enter buildings. You know, a lot of places have stairs and no ramps. There's this like architectural ableism that the access of disabled people is deprioritized. But then there's also and the part of ableism I write a lot about in the book is this belief we all have that it is better to be non disabled than disabled. And I think everyone assumes that. Everyone says, well, all I care about is if they're healthy. All that matters is your health. All we have is our health. And my argument is that it's wrong, that there's a few things happening here. One, pity, which is what that's saying, that it's worse to be disabled, is very close to disdain. Those emotions live near each other. And if we pity someone, if we assume their life is worse without them telling us it's worse, then we're a little bit disrespecting them or disdaining them. But then there's also the fact that every body, like every person, lives in a body that will die and will fail and will most likely be disabled at some point. And so we're all fragile and it's a matter of degrees. And so if the standard is all that matters is our health, every person falls short or will fall short. And I think what we really have to reckon with is how do we live these lives knowing that the thing we want most, which is to never die and to never be fragile and to never fail, will come for us all. And
Mhm.
I think that's the actual question instead of just assuming that all we have to aim for is health.
That's a great point. And Jessica, I think maybe you've answered this, but what was the most difficult truth to write in your book and the most liberating one? And I just want to say, from my perspective, you just created a liberating moment for me. Was about with health. So I just wanted
Thanks.
to note that. But what was the most
Yeah.
difficult truth in your book and most liberating one?
The chapter on medical care was the most difficult because I wrote about forced sterilization. I wrote about, one parent, Michael Hickson, who wasn't able to access medical care he needed, and he was actually prevented actively from receiving it. And I write his full story, but he ended up dying, and he was a parent, and it was from pure ableism. A doctor in a hospital said that his life had no purpose if he was disabled, and he had medicine withheld, and it's a story that's worse than it's even sounding right now. And I think
Mhm.
writing that chapter and really getting into the details and the depth of ableism and medical care was the hardest. Um, and the most liberating was interviewing other disabled people and hearing how beautiful and interesting and creative their lives are, because it made me have more respect for my own life and my own funny little family organism, that I thought I'm part of this group of people and I'm lucky to be part of us.
Now that you live in Canada, I must ask,
Mhm.
do you find things different there in any way, healthcare wise, societal wise?
I mean, certainly the healthcare has not been worse. Everyone warned me, because I could we had good health insurance. We could afford good health care in the US, but I have not seen a change in the quality of my health care.
What did they warn you? They warned you it would
That,
be worse?
yeah, that it would be harder to access doctors, that the wait times were very long, but I had everything's fine. I had a abnormal mammogram and I was in the next day to get a follow-up appointment. Anytime I've had a need for medical care here, it's happened quickly. So I think there's
Yeah.
this myth about Canadian medical care that, you can't access what you need. But, we've had our kids have needed medical care quickly before, and they've been able to access it. So that has so far, I mean, knock on wood, not been true for our family. Um, say people are generally more mild-mannered. I will not say ableism has been any better at all, though. I have, there's been a lot of places I've needed to go and haven't been able to go. I've encountered a lot of people unwilling to make any changes to make something more accessible. My kid has gone to a few schools that weren't accessible. She went to one school and they had a meeting for all the parents in the school, and it was down some stairs. And I asked if we could meet somewhere else. And they suggested that I just look in through the window, and then they would call me on my phone on speakerphone so that I could hear. And I was like, I'm not going to sit outside a window while an entire room of people can see me peering through the window at this meeting.
God.
So, um, I mean, it's humiliating, and I
It's
just didn't.
ridiculous.
Actually, it's comical.
It is
Yeah,
comical.
Oh my God.
Yeah, as everyone walks by, and I just didn't go.
What if it
And
was raining? I mean, my God.
yeah,
I
that's
mean,
not an answer.
it is the land of ice and snow. I mean, my God.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Oh, and then there's that. I mean, there's in Toronto, as I don't know, Amy, this past winter when we had that
Yes.
awful February, I was stuck home for a month because the
Right.
sidewalks were not clear. My husband kept going on these reconnaissance missions to see, could I leave the house yet? And he was like, no, there's still too many places where you can't cross the street. You can't get over, the,
Yeah.
so no, I would not say disability access has been any better here.
Any better?
No.
That's good to know.
Your spirit, how do you maintain your spirit in spite of what you've just told us?
I think I was just born a person who tends towards happiness. I think we get kind of a lot in life of how happy we tend to be and how resilient we tend to be. And I think I got dealt a resilient hand. I don't think there's anything I do to earn it. I think I just ended up a happy person.
Wow, that's that's very hopeful for all of us, I must say. Jessica, this podcast is called Believe in People. What does believing in people mean to you now as a mother, a writer, and a disabled advocate?
I believe people can change their mind. I do. I think I experienced a major change when I became disabled. I changed the way I saw the world and the way I saw myself. And in my own work, I have watched people change how they think about disability. I've watched non-disabled people open their hearts to disabled experience. I've watched disabled people release some of the shame they hold. And I think I believe in people because I do believe that we can change.
It's very hopeful. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you so much for spending your time with us and sharing your story. And, now I believe in people a little bit more. And this is my damn podcast, for crying out loud. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jessica. Really
Thanks for
appreciate
having me.
And the book again is called Unfit Parent. For those who are listening, I'm holding it up. It's called
It'll also be
Unfit Parent.
posted.
Jessica Slice, thank you. Thanks for spending your time with us. And
Thank you.
Please give your kids an extra big hug.
I will.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And David too.
Bye.
Bye. That was very inspirational. I mean, wow. I mean, we are all equal in somebody's eyes. Not that I'm, proselytizing or anything like that here, but what an inspirational conversation with somebody that knows that at the end of the day, we are all the same, and we are all going to the same place. So why not make the most of it? Thank you.
Exactly. And she's, and what she did was really share her heart, and that we should be empathetic and compassionate humans because we are human after all, whatever that looks like. And so Jessica really inspired me to think actually a little differently, because the go-to word is, it's, if you don't have your health, you don't have anything. I hear, you hear that repeatedly, and that's a misconception. So it's just, I'm really grateful for her rephrasing that.
Yeah. And I mean, she has her health. Her health is what it is.
Absolutely.
And that's, and anyway, she's delightful.
She is delightful. If
And-
you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to Believe in People. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.